Wonderful. So, good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to Founder Institute Caribbean's fourth event for the year. We endeavor to host at least one per month. During cohorts, we host weekly sessions, and our next cohort kicks off actually May 20th, so just around the corner. We had a really good attendance roll. I think the last time I checked earlier on, around 90 attendees registered. So usually we end up with 40 to 45% actually attending versus who registered. So we should have a good turnout this evening. Really excited and happy about that. So things are changing rapidly, right? The world is changing rapidly, and I think it's incumbent upon us all as innovation ecosystem developers to not just follow the signals, but to get ahead of them. Certainly at Founder Institute, we're doing that. We're in the process of transitioning to an AI native company builder. So from our next cohort going forward, founders will have access to, the latest AI tools, AI agents, helping them to ideate, build, and launch in a compressed period of time, and especially catering to solo, non-technical founders who are taking advantage of the whole vibe coding scene. So format this evening is we'll go around the table, do some quick intros to the panel. The conversation should the meat of the conversation that is should last maybe about an hour, and we'll have more than sufficient time for all attendees to get involved, ask the panelists, pick their brains. This is the opportunity to do that. So we'll start with ladies first. Saelese, would you like to kick things off?
Sure, I'm happy to kick off. I am Saelese Haynes. I'm an attorney at law from Trinidad and Tobago. I would have studied initially in the UK. I know we have a panelist coming in from Cambridge. And then I returned to Trinidad just about 11 or 12 years ago or so. And since then, I've mostly been involved in regional practice, so Trinidad and Tobago and some of our other English-speaking islands. I have a quite varied background. So my practice is more or less built on three things: intellectual property and oil and gas, and then business, so corporate and commercial law. I know those are all very different, but somehow it works for now. And most recently, a vibe coder myself. So I think that's about it in a nutshell until we get into the nitty-gritty of the discussion.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Saelese. Uh, Dr. Proselkov, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much, Rawle. I was along with Rawle for the Venture Institute or VC Lab cohort, the Venture Associate stream. I come from Cambridge, did my PhD there in supply chain AI. The question of like limited information management for multiple different stakeholders, and have since developed along that line in developing technologies to estimate and predict impact within venture research, or like developing digital or physically integrated ecosystems which relate AI, innovation, culture, the physical space as well, and how to manage all of those. A few of my ventures have included one course teaching entrepreneurship to younger students, trying to get them to think about it as an educational pathway. Cambridge, 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 Cambridge. And also working now with one awesome startup. We're trying to develop a sort of AI modular representation of education itself. So excited to be talking to you tonight about like the different ways AI entrepreneurship venture can be manifested, and how high the ceiling of this whole thing is. Thank you very much, Rawle.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yaniv. Lissette, would you like to go next? Lissette? Okay, Lissette may be frozen. So Shruti, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. So, hi, my name is Shruti. I live in Berlin. I'm originally from India. I came here about 9 years ago. Too long for my own liking at this point. Uh, I've been working in startups for the last 12 years. I worked with early stage startups in Berlin, right in the founding teams, and then realized there's something wrong. Funding is broken. I need to figure out how it works. So I switched to the venture side of things. I got into venture. I worked at a VC for some time and quickly realized there's a huge gap between what founders understand when it comes to fundraising, running their companies, and what VCs expect, what the other investors want from the entire sort of ecosystem. So I essentially started CapitalSnapshot to fix that. The idea is that a lot of founders run behind power law and try to become unicorns, but there's a potential for a lot more startups to be actually profitable companies. And so our intention with Capital Snapshot is to have more profitable companies worldwide. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. If you While I was doing different things in startups, I think I discovered YouTube. So if you want to watch really interesting videos about really boring topics, you can check out some of my videos. I try to make videos about very nerdy topics and try to make them fun. So, which is why I have a cool background, as Rawle has always indicated. So, thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to this panel.
We love nerds, Shruti. We love nerds. What can we say? Andy, would you like to go next?
Sure, yeah. My name is Andy Karuza. I'm the head of marketing at NachoNacho. We're a SaaS and AI marketplace. We work with all the top software and AI products in the market and offer, huge discounts. We have direct relationships with all the brands and directly negotiate the best pricing you could possibly get. I've been a founder as well several times, some wins, some losses. You learn a lot from all of them, no matter which side of the coin you end up on. Been in startups for I think about 18 years now. My first company was doing events in college. Then I started a social media agency, expanded to a variety of other marketing services from there. Then I got into technology because I love the ability for technology to really scale things. So I've been doing technology for the most part of 15 to 17 years, and which got me to where I'm at today, working with a lot of other founders like me, helping promote their products to our 300,000 customers. I also operate as an angel investor, so I, get to meet a lot of great founders early stage and love to write their first check, typically smaller check sizes, but I typically bet on the founder and have a pretty good understanding of the products, typically to as an operator myself to take a bet on them. So that's my background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. Lissette, I see your camera is working again. So you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. So my name is Lissette, and I'm based in the Cayman Islands. So I've been in marketing for the past 25 years. I don't know how that happened because I'm only 25. But yeah, so I'm very much into brand strategy and communications, mostly for governments and large organizations across the Caribbean. My experience started back in Latin America and then Cayman for the past 11 years. And recently, since 2022, I turned into the technology to, in the first place, try to optimize my own operation as an owner and as an agency, which eventually led me to create a SaaS AI marketing and then literally trying to navigate both of the worlds, the traditional AI and how communication structure should work for government entities, and at the same time, how to leverage the technology for more out there, more risky use cases. So it's been a very interesting journey and trying to mix and match both without dismissing both. So I'm very excited to share my findings so far with you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Lissette. And for those of you who may be new to our community, my name is Rawle Annandsingh. I lead Founder Institute in the Caribbean. And this evening I'm joined by these two lovely ladies, Adana John, who heads our communications, and Dr. Nike Schmidt, who will be serving as our program manager going forward. So let's dive into it. Yaniv, we'll kick things off with you, So you've already shared that your work sits at the intersection of AI, network systems, and real-world infrastructure like supply chains and telecoms. You've also spent time inside deep tech incubators where those ideas have to translate into working systems. So when founders describe their startups as AI native, what should that actually mean at a systems level, beyond just layering AI onto an existing product?
So it depends on what you mean by system, and answering that exact question is one of the key problems of it all. You can have a given system, say a supply chain, where a lot of my research has come from, say port dynamics, internal port dynamics. And you can have the port movements, and you install some sort of cameras or whatever into the system to develop some sort of readout of what's happening, and then an AI inference which suggests you strategically how you should adjust things. That's not AI native. That's not AI native. AI native means recognizing the structure of the current economy we have. That is to say, we have a system, an AI system. AI is an ecosystem unto itself. Recognizing that if you feed into it, you get back the same rough thing. Designing your innovations with AI developments in mind. To say, I have this given product, and its purpose, beyond just developing some kind of return or servicing some sort of need, it establishes a data channel. It allows me to learn about something else. It plugs into this given system, and it does so smoothly in a way which then allows me to bootstrap its growth using AI mechanisms. You have to study how all these things connect into one another, the stakeholder networks, the physical networks, the digital networks, whether you're determining whether the kind of venture you're developing is one where data can be extracted out of it, and rejecting those that can't, because that's not a path to modern day bootstrapping. That's AI native. That's looking at the AI system as a goal unto itself. Because you have to start seeing the object that is being developed at the moment it's not the only deliverable anymore. People have been saying it, data is the new oil, data is the new oil, data is the new oil. We now know what to do with the oil. If you're not doing something with this oil, you're just sitting there in a bucket of grease, which, I mean, to some people, maybe that's good, but personally, not my cup of tea. How do I elaborate on this? I'll try to give an example. Okay. Let's AIOS. I'm working with AIOS now. That's where a lot of my development work is going. And our goal is not just to teach kids. It's not just to teach people and to get them inspired and all those things. Our goal is to tap into that source of information, plugging into how teachers connect with student experiences, how students navigate through this process, and trying to understand how this can be smoothly achieved without causing the normal business, the act of education, without tapping from that to make that less efficient. It has to be a synchronicity. The yin and yang has to be intersected with itself. And then going from a systems perspective, there's fundamental mathematics that needs to be considered in this process, as well as its impact onto everybody else. You can't really get away with skipping those different concepts. You can't get away with skipping the statistics, the data science, the data engineering, the human factor, the stakeholders, the business itself, how they all interlace. And because you have the tools now to assess them. You have the AIs, you have a machine to tell you this connects with this, and then you can start studying yourself independently. It's not just you anymore. So you can achieve those things, and you have to. That's what makes something AI native.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Yaniv. Earlier on, I was looking at some content that Deanna, who the general partner at Y Combinator, put out, and she was describing something very similar to what you just shared in terms of an AI OS, so that the tools are, or I should say that from a startup perspective, we're moving away or transitioning from just AI tools helping with productivity to AI being part of your operating system, and not just for the engineering department, but across all segments of your company. So yeah, so that's a really interesting perspective. Thanks so much, Yaniv. We'll keep the conversation flowing. So, jumping to you, Saelese. I've been following you on your socials. You're very active, and I love your content. And so I've seen that you've spent probably over a decade advising across not just corporate, but also commercial and cross-border legal matters as well. And you're working across several jurisdictions in the Caribbean. So for founders who are beginning to build AI native companies now, what are you seeing as the biggest legal blind spots, particularly around their data usage, ownership, and liability? Share some nuggets with us.
So I think a big one is people getting maybe too excited and then caught up in the potential and possibility, and not actually mapping things out from end to end as to how everything is going to work and fit together. Like, for instance, I've had founders who would come and say, I'm going to build an all AI company. Everything's going to be run by AI. And I just laugh in the back of my head, because I'm like, are you reading the news and seeing what AI is doing to companies that go that way? So there are risks. And yes, there have been systems that have been broken for a very long time. I'm very tech forward, I would think. Like, I'm not a technologist, but at the same time, I'm very open to technology and use cases that help in the way that I work, in the way that I run my life. But at the same time, we have to understand that there are a lot of blind spots and problems that we know of, and then also that we don't know of, and kind of figure out, we're not going to know all of the answers, we're not going to know all of the problems, so we can't know all of the solutions, but we are being very naive. And when I say we, I would include myself in that too, in that we think that there are these patches and save alls that will figure themselves out, and we don't need to think about it. Because I even had somebody say that to me as well. They said, well, I built an AI manager, so even if there are problems with the way things are implemented, this guy is going to fix it all. He sits above all the other agents. He knows, he's based on me. He knows what to do. It's never gonna work. It's not, I shouldn't say never, but it certainly is not where we currently are at. And I mean, Rawle, we've seen some of the reports coming out from bigger jurisdictions as to what happens when you leave AI alone. And I would say, even for me, like, I get caught up as so when you approached me to do this talk, I had to kind of take a step back and think, because I was like, okay, I've never actually worked with an entirely AI native company yet. I have a lot of companies that are implementing AI and want to be AI native, but I've never seen how that works. So I had to kind of sit down and think, like, what am I actually going to talk about in this chat? And then that was maybe about 6 weeks ago. Since then, with some tools that we've had developed, I've actually built an AI product. And I was like, wow, like, I didn't see myself there when I signed up for this. But it's been interesting then seeing the perspectives in the back end. It's been interesting seeing how quickly things are developing. And I have no tech training, I have no coding training whatsoever. And to be able to build a product myself, one which, to be fair, I've designed a very long time ago and just needed to have somebody technical to implement it. But to be able to sit down and do that myself in a night or two was absolutely amazing. And it goes back to my point point that there's a high likelihood that as founders, we're going to caught up in the beauty and magic of it without thinking about all the other things that need to run in the back end. There's so many complex issues. If you want to look at copyrights, if you look at training, one that I haven't seen talked about a lot yet, but I anticipate that it's going to come up is the source of all of these things that where it's not, it might seem like magic, but it's not magic. The data is coming from somewhere. So when you think about patent infringement, copyright infringement, trademark infringement, those are very real possibilities that you may have to deal with. And I've seen a couple cases and demand letters popping up, but as a founder, again, you see something that magically appears and it works. So why are you concerning yourself with that? But then you have to if it's in your entire business. And that's just one slice of the liability that can come up.
Yeah, Saelese, recently we had that conversation with Levuka Venture Lab around AI governance, right? And its implications, especially for more mature companies who are sort of retrofitting and retooling versus a startup in whose DNA it's embedded from day one. So I guess, if your foundational building blocks from a startup perspective are AI is already ingrained in that, it's really different from a more mature company now trying to retool and figure stuff out.
Yes.
The legal implications, of course, I think we'll be continuing to sort of grapple with that, and on the topic of AI governance in particular, I think it's a really critical one for us to address sooner rather than later. But thanks for sharing that, Saelese. So moving right along, Lissette, you've spent 2 decades. I don't know how you did that because you said you're only 25 years old, so you started when you were 5, right? So you've been helping organizations.
That's right.
You've been helping organizations communicate, really complex ideas clearly. And now you're building an AI-driven system that can simplify these digital experiences. So, with AI products that can often feel abstract or even intimidating, how should founders think about communicating what they're building in a way that builds trust and drives adoption?
Yeah, so in my experience, especially because I'm very familiar with government communications and, large organizations like Chamber of Commerce and so on and so forth, the approach has been a little bit different. So as a founder, and in full disclosure, I'm a solo founder, non-technical founder. For me, the AI was a whole hype. So I got into the wave of let's build, let's write code, let's push this. Oh my God, this is the solution for every single problem my clients will have. And soon enough, I realized that that is not actually what the market is about. So for those founders who are based in the Caribbean, first and foremost, we have to understand that we are not the United States. We're not even Europe. The level and the fast pace of adoption of technology in the Caribbean is unfortunately way behind of the rest of the world. And in general, we have a lot of legal systems that we definitely need to navigate. The good news is that because we're very small countries in general, the ability to fast track things and apply and do very controlled experiments in terms of communication is amazing, right? So we get to experiment with a lot of things, try creative ways on how to apply the technology. But at the same time, and going back to what you were saying before, everything is tied to compliance and governance, especially when we talk about government communication. So I've been very fortunate to work hand in hand with Cayman Islands government and their very initial steps into adopting the technology into their public communication processes. And I think what we were saying at the very beginning, the process and the system actually defines the ability to apply or not that technology, and how us as we founders needs to understand and hear the market before we want to bring this hype, because it doesn't work that way. And I've seen both sides of the coin. I'm not saying that one side is good and the other side is bad. As a solo founder, not technical founder, AI has allowed me to fast speed company growth, product growth. I did pay a bunch of money to developers to create my product. And at the end of the day, the know-how wasn't there because they're developers, but they don't understand the communication system, how people actually work. And I believe as a founder that our
Did we lose Lissette? I think we did. Oh boy. Did we lose Andy as well? Okay, Andy's here.
Nope, I'm here. Sorry, I was just drinking
All
water.
right. Okay. I think we'll circle back to Lissette. I know she's been having some Wi-Fi difficulties. So Andy, we can pivot to you. You've managed to build and scale multiple products across SaaS, marketplaces, consumer tech, and I know you're a really strong advocate for partner-led growth in particular. But for an AI native startup coming out of our region, oftentimes with limited capital and distribution, what do you think is the smartest path to getting early traction? Sorry, Lissette, I know you're having difficulties. We're gonna jump with Andy and then I'll circle back to you. Okay?
She's sideways.
yes.
And your camera is sideways. Sorry,
All right.
Andy, did
Yep.
you get that or would you like me to repeat?
Yeah, no, I definitely got it. Yeah, so one thing, it might be a little counterintuitive here, but I would say don't overly rely on AI tools. So today you've heard a lot of people talking about how they're building. They've never been able to do this before because AI enables you to, really bring products to market super fast. So there's a lot of noise out there, both in terms of new products coming to market, but also from the marketing angle too. So everybody's using AI tools, which I definitely recommend as well, mostly for operationally focused things, like producing content, streamlining operations, doing some of the finance work you don't want to do. But one thing that you can't really replace, especially as an early stage startup, is the authenticity and the human nature of you as a founder. And I think that, is really one of your greatest gifts too. You should definitely leverage AI and the tools to help scale your product faster and get it out there. But don't lose sight of, you as the founder actually, using your time as a resource itself to be able to really authentically connect with people. Because I think the big problem now is that, there's easy come, easy go. Everybody can do marketing. Everybody can build the product and get it to market. But how do you really stand out from that noise? And I think that comes down to, trying to build real relationships with people, actually talking to your customers and getting that one-on-one time with them. If you want a sales effort, one thing I do is I schedule 15-minute calls with people that go to my events. I offer for them to be able to meet with me for 15 minutes and do a virtual call. All these people are highly qualified, definitely partnership or sales materials. So, I definitely want to donate my time to them. And many times I found that that's what actually closes the deals. The fact that I was actually willing to give my time to people. So consider that as a founder, actually building real relationships with people and doing some of the things that, don't necessarily scale on paper, but actually go a lot further than what the other startups are doing, just completely relying on AI or online tools. The other thing I would say is PLG obviously is another big one too. So building your product to be inherently viral. If you're a B2B product, make it easy for people to onboard team members. If you're a consumer product, make it easy for people and motivating for people to actually want to share it with others. So if you could build your product in a way where if it's a great product and you actually have MVP because you talked to your customers, right? Actually understood the problem. Your product would be set up at that point to really serve that customer need and scale naturally when people actually want to and feel compelled to invite other people to it. So product-led growth is, really another big initiative that you could build right into that product, and anybody can do it if you just think through the process and the UX there. The other is partnerships. So partnerships is something that you can leverage to tap into entire new communities. Look for companies or business partners that have a community of a similar ICP. And what you can do is, kind of like what we're doing here, do online webinars, get each other on there, to expose each other to each other's communities. You could do content marketing. You could also do newsletter exchanges. So look for those partnership-led growth opportunities as well, because a lot of companies, if you're building a network that's similar to theirs, they're willing to do cross-promotional things with you. And if you come across in a human, authentic way, and you're focused on the collaboration, many times you can get those opportunities and actually promote your brand for free and vice versa. The other thing I would say is to buck the trend too. A lot of times what we find in the tech space is people kind of live in a bubble. They want to do exactly what everybody else is doing. LinkedIn's a great example. Everybody's on there posting AI slop now. Um, it, everybody's trying to get attention from everybody else talking about what they do, because LinkedIn is inherently the place you want to be because you have people's titles, the company they work at. But a counterintuitive approach could be understanding that these same people, although you might not be able to target them like LinkedIn with their name and their title and their company, you could reach these people on TikTok too, right? A lot of these people are on there wasting their time looking at videos. But fortunately for you, a lot of other companies don't think of TikTok as a B2B platform. So there's very low supply of B2B content there. So it's a lot easier for you to stand out. And you could reach these same people by using targeted keywords and hashtags. So think about opportunities like that as well, where you could buck the trend and maybe look in different directions of where you could stand out. Another popular one too, I've seen many people do is, bring back the handwritten letter, right? So cold email's cheap and easy now. Everybody can get access to data. They could automate their campaigns. Cold email is just outrageous right now. People are so used to tuning it out. In fact, the email service providers now are hypersensitive for identifying spam and flagging those. So if you do something that's counterintuitive, again, donate your time as a founder, write a quick letter to somebody, send it to them. That's really going to stand out from all the other people if you really want to establish that sales partnership and collaboration there. The last I would say is community really matters more than ever. If you can't be there in person, not everybody could be in San Francisco or New York City or one of those other hubs, but there's a lot of founder groups, both on Slack, WhatsApp, where you could join for free and connect with other people in those other markets, just so you could stay ahead of the curve in terms of knowledge, insights, and build real relationships with people, even if it's online. You could still be in those groups, connecting with people and being a part of that ecosystem, even if you're not physically present.
Wow, Andy, that's a waterfall of nuggets there, man. But no, I mean it resonates. So, a few years ago I was in Techstars and their culture was all about giving first, right? And that stayed with me, so always giving value before you ask, you give, building that community, building the trust. So you're sort of building that bank of trust before you try to tap into it. So
Yep.
loving those nuggets, Andy. Loving it. Thanks so much. Lissette, would you like to finish your last point before we
Yes.
transition to Shruti?
Yes, I'm sorry about the connection. So
That's
yeah,
okay.
so what I wanted to say is that at the end of the day, listening to your market is very essential. There is a lot of hype in the market and a lot of this
Lissette, you're frozen again. Would you like to take the video off,
and as
maybe?
a founder, when you have the ability to pass into a product, it kind of soothes. Sure. So let's try this way. So what I wanted to say is that sometimes you just have to listen to your market, the hype and the distrust. You are able to walk into your clients with a certainty that your product is not an easy solve to a problem, but a deep thinking on that problem. The perception is completely different. And I think that's how the Caribbean has a very valuable opportunity to be different from the rest of the world, which is not just create SaaS product to solve easy problems, but to think deeply about what is that your client needs and how you are going to provide a meaningful solution.
Thank you so much for that, Lissette. I was you piqued my curiosity when you touched on the Cayman Islands government and how they're adopting AI. So I'll be interested to sort of double click on that a bit later on. Maybe in the Q&A we can dive a little bit deeper into that, because I think from a policy perspective,
Yes.
we also depend on our local governments to sort of
Yes.
drive and enable that change, right?
Yeah.
Alongside private sector.
Yeah, there is a lot of legislation also that you have to work around. Let's not forget that most of the Caribbean are overseas territories, right? And most of the UN legislation is applying to us. Even though we're very close to the US markets, we're not that risk takers as the US markets. We're more into the European mindset when it comes especially to financial sector, which is huge across the Caribbean. So the framework and how the law is applying to the use of technology is meaningfully impacting the way we are.
Okay, Lissette, you're breaking up a lot. So I'm gonna move on to Shruti, but perhaps in the meantime, maybe if you wanna log off, log back on, or sort of reboot your Wi-Fi, toggle it on and off, and see if that helps. Would love to pick up the conversation later on. So Shruti, you've had a unique vantage point, working inside startups across functions and then moving into venture, where you've now seen investors, how investors, I would say, how the investors evaluate companies, and it just so happens that now you're building tools to help founders make more sense of their numbers. So for AI native startups, what are some of the financial metrics or signals that actually matter, especially in the early stages?
Yeah, so my intention of going into venture was exactly because I wanted to understand what is it that investors see when they want to fund companies, right? I wanted to understand that, and then since then I've been speaking to investors, speaking to different founders. What I have found out, I don't know if I would say surprisingly, it seems intuitive now, is that the the metrics are not different just because AI is in the picture. It's just that they've moved a little. So, like Andy said, right? Because AI has made it so easy to just get into the market, everyone, or there are more and more companies that are getting into the market today. What now matters is exactly what mattered even 10 years ago, is do you have customers, paying customers? So paying customers is the main metric that is, again, like it's no different than what it was before AI, but what has happened, it is shifted. So before, you could, I mean, there are still companies in the US who still raise on an idea, but then that's not the case for most of us. And that's also not more common anymore. So investors want to see revenue, actual revenue, before they invest their own money. Investors want to see paying customers. The funding sizes have moved as well. So if I remember right, I think 2021, I mean 2023, let's say 22, 23, you required 1 million ARR to raise a Series A. Now that number is too small for Series A. Now they want a much larger revenue, ARR, for you to make to before you even think about raising a Series A. So the metrics are the same. It's mainly what is, like, how much revenue are you bringing in? What is your CAC? Are you spending too much for bringing a customer? So, and then do you have enough money to last the next fundraise? So the metrics remain the same, irrespective of, if, I mean, AI or not. It is just that the speed, or like the timeline, has moved here.
That's really interesting, Shruti. And for at the pre-seed stage, because you mentioned that, typically, or in the past, you needed to have like a million ARR for Series A, and now, yeah, that's nowhere close to what it is now. But what are you seeing at the pre-seed stage in terms of those numbers?
I think it's very different depending on geography, because I think Lizette also mentioned that the American markets are more like buyer-friendly markets. So in the US, you're expecting anywhere between like, oh, you need to have at least 100K, 200K, whatever, even for a pre-seed, just to show. But then here in Europe, it's much lower, but it's still significant. So they want to see a 10K revenue before you go pre-seed, or they want to see at least 10K or something on those lines. So the numbers vary depending on the geography, also like the purchasing power, and how buyer friendly the markets you're serving are. But the numbers are crazy. Like I think one of the most famous ones here in Berlin currently is Peak AI, and I think they raised, if I'm not wrong, they raised a seed round right now, and they're already at 25 million, which is crazy. So the numbers are going completely crazy right now, but the expectations have definitely more than what they were, let's say, 5-6 years ago.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for that, Shruti. Really appreciate your insights there. Yaniv, we're going back to the top. We're going back to the top. So, Yaniv, you've led teams through, environments like Cambridge where the bar for technical rigor is extremely high, right? Especially in deep tech and AI. But from your perspective, where are founders typically underestimating that complexity of building AI systems? And further to that point, where do you think or imagine Caribbean founders can realistically compete on a global stage?
So the population of Cambridge is not the population of MIT or Harvard. It's also not the population of Oxford. It's not. I mean, I believe Cambridge has maybe UK has one of the highest rates of like outputted venture to number of scientists. Yes, but the people themselves doing the work in Cambridge, they're scientists. Vast majority are scientists. They're engineers, they're technical people. They have incredible technical expertise, they tend to. But echoing a lot of what my co-panelists are saying, the awareness of how to make a business from this technical object, completely wrong. 9 times out of 10, it's solution looking for a problem, as opposed to someone understanding there are problems here and opportunities. They need this kind of solution. Very much Nikola Tesla rather than Steve Jobs. That's the common thing happening within Cambridge. Going a bit further out in general, and it's again saying the same things. There's a lot more to building in AI. There's a lot more beyond just we've pretty much reached saturation point for the technical advancement attainable by AI. Of course, if you are doing the absolute frontier of things, then you're still doing it. But like for vast majority of founders, applications for all the other 99% of problems in the world, we're pretty much stuck there. The challenge now is the new sort of business model that is arising because of this bar for competency. The bar for managing ecosystems, the bar for managing stakeholder relationships, the bar for managing who and how you're going to be raising from. You said like Series A is now 25 million or like 10 million for one. That's because for the vast majority of people, you don't really need that much injection of money to be operative, to be something that does something. You can do it by yourself for far less. You should. But you need to know who and how you're doing. So another branch of my work is mapping the Cambridge innovation ecosystem and proposing a novel way for it to operate, given that it is a disaggregated, disorganized mess, and not trying to get rid of this. And one interesting thing that I found is that a lot of the development of the science from this, the ideas, they come from this complexity, this multiplicity. And to my understanding, the Caribbean environment is very similar in this way, that it's not a fully established innovation economy. There's lots of different places, lots of different economies, lots of different conditions. The pure geophysical structure of the Caribbean means like you've got the oceans, you've got the beaches, you've got the inlands, you've got the mountains, you've got everything, and that physically changes the problem that you have to deal with. The constraints of it are enormous, but the insight that can be derived from this is immense. You're playing on hard difficulty, but because the real challenge now isn't the technical output, but the personal and knowledge or communicable output. Playing on that hard difficulty means you have the advantage of the most interesting case study possible. You have so many ways to be unique. Your challenge is to know how to plug in to the ecosystem, and then using the tools you have available to do this, and then you have a framework for porting this around the world. Building, to my understanding, in the Caribbean it's anybody's game. And because of that, your capacity for knowledge capital, which is the real thing, strategic knowledge capital, to be specific, not just like how to optimize the processing of sorghum or whatever. Strategically understanding how to manage hyper-complex interactivity, which has not yet been formalized by collective operational systems. You have the capacity, first of all, for yourself to find, but going back to the Caribbean, and using the example of Cambridge, the advantages that you can achieve by upgrading such a system without fundamentally transforming it, it allows for something far more advanced than anybody else. Cambridge is amazing because it's disaggregated, because there's 1,001 different operations being done to conduct a new kind of science, to create new kind of interactions, interpersonal interactions, new different laboratories, new approaches. It's a jungle. The more consolidated economies, the broader Britain, it's slow. It's so slow in Britain. It's so slow in Europe. America is excellent because it's fast, because it's still, with all due respect, a developing economy. And the more you're in that nature of an economy, that ability to develop, the more you can get out of it. And because the interpersonal networks that you get are the advantage, you have the ability to create superior interpersonal networks that you inhabit. And from there, then you can compete. You can destroy anybody easily, because it's all knowledge integration.
Jungle meets wide open blue ocean, right? And I what you mentioned earlier in that segment around Cambridge with a lot of scientists and creating solutions in search of a problem, when we know in the startup world it's the reverse, so yeah, just wanted to double click on that, but thanks so much, Yaniv.
If I may close for just 1 second, please.
Yeah, of course.
So the real competitive point is the human one. And speaking from an evolutionary perspective, humanity evolved on the beaches. A human being is the most complex, the most diverse entity required to analyze the most complex ecological spaces, and those are the beaches.
Yaniv, combine that and put it into my presentations moving forward. Love it.
Love that. Thanks again, Yaniv. So Saelese, you continue to work closely with businesses that are scaling and expanding beyond their home markets. We live in the Caribbean, and we already know that you can't just be thinking about your island that you live on. You have to be thinking region at a minimum. So for a founder who is in the Caribbean and wants to build for a global market from day one, how should they be thinking about structuring their company legally to avoid friction later on?
Okay, so I mentioned one of my legal pillars was oil and gas, right? And I think the best example of being able to mitigate and spread risk I learned from those environments. So the oil companies, we have a lot of them in Trinidad. What you might hear BP, but what you see or hear or understand is that that's actually BP Block 2A Trinidad, BP Block 3B Trinidad, and 100 different companies that are all very ring fenced to the specific operations that they're doing. And definitely, the bigger that you grow, the more I see the need for a structure like that, that you have from a foundational level corporate entities that are risk fenced and ring fenced. So, for instance, if you're operating in Trinidad, you have a Trinidad based entity. You might be part of a group that has a Barbados based entity, a Grenadian based entity, but all of them are their own separate, individually, legally accountable, and risk managed entities. And there's so much value that can come from that. I don't think people understand how magic that just that one thing is. But then also you need a structure to maintain and govern all of those different entities too. So that's when now layers of complexity sneak in, and you need to have specialized persons who understand the compliance requirements for each of those entities operating in different jurisdictions. And that in itself is a huge task. The way I see compliance going in every single sector that I operate in, things are getting a lot more difficult, not easier. And we kind of see the end of that on a consumer-based spectrum as well, when we have to deal with the banks, when we have to get loans, and they need 100 different pieces of paperwork, and your grandmother's birth certificate and her great-grandmother's hair of a locket of hair, and it gets really crazy sometimes. But that's because, and we're talking about being in the Caribbean, the fact of the matter is that the Caribbean is seen as risky. We have countries and organizations that are on gray lists, no blacklists, but we have been seen as a risk, as if you look at it from the offshore reputation, from the things that are said and portrayed in movies and popular culture, that everything goes. And because of that, we then are dealt with on an arm's length. We're seen as not structurally sound for good business unless you go through all of these hoops. So then that adds in a whole different level of complexity too. And just as I was saying, not just in the Caribbean, but worldwide, I see compliance becoming more and more difficult every single day in most sectors. So that has to be taken into account too. That adds costs, that adds complexity, that adds needs for strategic persons who can navigate all of that. And if you start to think about all of that as a founder, then you probably don't want to get out of bed. But it's just something that has to be taken into the mix. So what I would say is try to plan ahead in a way that mitigates risks and builds structures that are sound individually, but also look at how that's going to be governed on an umbrella basis, and think about the resources that you will need moving ahead to operate with a structure like that. But most importantly, the first and most important step is to start, right? So definitely don't let anything that I said discourage you from building a great business.
Yeah, one term that stood out for me was risk fenced, you should coin that term, that should be your term. You need to own that term, Saelese. So certainly, I think one of the benefits of working with a community like FI as well is that you surround yourself with so many different mentors that can serve as an advisor, because when you're a founder at this early stage, you're bootstrapping, you can't afford to pay for Saelese, but certainly you can book office hours with her during the accelerator and get some advice. So yeah. Thanks for that, Saelese. Lissette, are you all sorted now? Can I circle back to you?
Yes, I guess the
All right.
connection is solved. This is the beauty of the Caribbean. It
All right,
cannot be all
wonderful.
perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we touched on earlier on, Lissette, that you've worked extensively with governments and public sector organizations, Cayman Islands and across the Caribbean, which often deal with scale and complexity and old legacy systems, right? So from your perspective, where do you see the biggest opportunity right now for AI native startups to create some real impact for the region?
Yeah, so I think you have touched on a subject that is very meaningful for the Caribbean region, which is legacy softwares. We have to understand that the market is not going to just throw away everything that they have right now just because there is new software or there is the possibility of optimization. There is a lot of persistence because they trust the systems that are in place. So as a founder, the biggest opportunity that I have found is not volume, but understanding of the process. And the AI is actually letting us to build softwares that are very niche to the problems and systems that already are in place for our clients. So, for instance, just to give you an example, for the Cayman Islands government, the process of embedding AI into the communication process, it wasn't not about the tool or how to use it, or, the flashy part of how to create an image or how to create more content. It was more about trying to smooth the creation process. The creativity and the authority of the content that has been produced still lies with the humans that are behind these teams or that are part of these teams. But the AI is just behind these humans to kind of propel their capacity to analyze first, to collect better data, and then how and what to do with that data. So as Ravi was saying earlier on, I think the biggest opportunity for us is more about how we can help our customers and the market in general on how to optimize systems. It's not about the tool, it's not about the outcome, but it's more about the applications to it. And again, as Saelese was saying before, there is a lot of compliance that needs to be taken into consideration. As I was saying earlier, when my communication was kind of broken, most of the Caribbeans are overseas territories, right? We're part of the Commonwealth. There is a lot of European legislation that applies to us. And that is a big opportunity, but also a big barrier. We're not in the same hype as North American market, but definitely when you can come across as an expert on the area that you are, and you can provide that bridge between the technology and the expertise to what is needed in the market based on market needs, then there is a massive opportunity. In fact, I'm so happy to hear that you guys are now, as part of Founder Institute, embracing more solopreneurs, no technical like I remember when I first started all this journey and trying to do fundraising, everybody was saying, well, let's start from the beginning. You're Latina, you're a woman, you have kids, you don't know anything about technology, you're a solo founder. If you die tomorrow, where my money is going to go? So I had all the tick box that venture capitalists will say, do not invest in this company. But the AI let me bridge that gap, not because I was masking it, but because I was potentially exploring my own capabilities to be more efficient. And I think that's the biggest opportunity. I don't think the Caribbean market is about growth and volume, but deep down and niching to what exactly is the need of the market.
Yeah, Lissette, I mean, I would say that recently, as maybe a few months ago, just last year, that the advice was if you're a solo founder, especially if you're non-technical, you need to find a technical co-founder and then apply as a team. Now all of that has changed, and it's because we have now access to the tools, access to the agents, so that as non-technical founders, you could at least ideate, build, and launch. Now, I still see value in having a team. So I think from where I sit, the value is that as a solo founder, you can at least launch an MVP. But as you transition to growing and scaling, yeah, then you need to bring on, you need to
100%.
team up.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but so like in my personal experience, I applied to YC 3 years ago, and I got into the interview, which is, like 3% of everybody who applies. And I was so proud of myself. And the first thing that the person who was interviewing me says, like, why on earth would I put $1 on you? And this was 3 years ago, right? When the hype is like AI is just massive, it's volume, it's numbers. And I told him at that point, I said, for me, it's more about the capacity and how my experience with 25 years in the market can be exponentially shared with more people. And I do prefer to have a $3,000 client on my product than a $20, thousands of $20 a month subscription clients. And I think that's a shift. I don't think it's just about the team and how founders are perceived, but also how we're building software, because we don't have to settle for any software. And think about it. Why your customers will have to settle for the software you're trying to build when they can actually, just like you, build their own tools. So what is that you're bringing as a founder? Like, what is that solution that you're actually building? You see? So even the concept of a SaaS is changing.
Exactly. Yeah. Congrats, by the way, on getting an interview with YC. That in itself is an accomplishment. So pat on the shoulder there for that, Lissette. So, Andy, we'll transition to you. I know you've seen startups across different stages, both as a builder and as an investor, angel investor, and you've developed your own framework around, teams, timing, traction, and of course technology. But in the current wave of AI startups now, what do you think separates those companies that actually scale from the ones that get stuck in the continuous hype cycle? Because you mentioned like LinkedIn, right? It's so noisy. So yeah, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, and my so it's the 4 T's of investing that I kind of follow. It's my thesis for investing in companies, but T's kind of interchangeable with unique selling proposition as well. So you really have to be bringing something unique. And what I see a lot, probably 8 times out of 10, Pareto principle, I guess. A lot of companies are launching AI features masquerading as a company. So their pitch might be, we're QuickBooks, but with AI. Right. So I see a lot of those companies coming out because they could add this AI feature to an existing problem that's already out there. What a lot of these companies don't realize is that, QuickBooks already has, access to the same features, obviously. They have the trust and loyalty with their customer base. They have the brand. And while they might not have that feature now, they could very easily layer that in and, do so actually. So there's a lot of companies that kind of launch as a feature, but not a real unique business model. So I always recommend to people really think about yourself in terms of like, what do you bring? What does an AI enable for you to bring to market because of the technology that allows you to do something in a completely different way, not just being another feature that you could tack on to an existing problem that's already been solved by a bigger company out there. There's no real moat behind that. Yeah, so the winners aren't going to be these feature add-ons. They're going to find like a unique proposition that they can actually bring to the market because of AI. The other is that, sometimes you could just be the pick and shovel as well, right? So you don't actually have to be the AI play. You could support the AI infrastructure. That could be in terms of, tooling for AI. It could be services around artificial intelligence. Answer engine optimization is an example of a lot of companies that I see coming out. It's the latest craze, I guess, of SEO. Everybody's trying to show up in Claude and ChatGPT, and this problem didn't exist before AI was really a thing. So this really came out recently as like a new problem that needed to be solved because of the advent of AI. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that company either because I've seen 10 of those too. But that just gives you an idea of maybe some different ways you could play on this opportunity.
Good stuff there, Andy. Yeah, I mean, I'm still a founder, and that's something that I struggle with as well, right? So I think what works for me though, it at least allows me to have a bit more empathy in being an innovation ecosystem builder, by still, being in the trenches and trying to figure all of that out. So yeah, so I certainly appreciate those nuggets. Thanks again for that. So our last and final question goes to Shruti, and then we'll open up the floor to Q&A. So Shruti, you're working with several founders who operate sometimes without any clear financial visibility until it becomes a problem. So for a founder who's building an AI native company now, what do you think financial readiness looks like before they even start thinking about raising capital? You're you're on mute, Shruti.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
So yeah, what fine again, like I feel like I'm repeating myself, but financial readiness with or without AI native building again is the same that it was for building any other company. But the main thing is that the costs have now shifted. So for me, for a founder to know their financial readiness, they need to understand where their money is going. How is the money moving? So, right now, let's say, everyone joins these accelerators, incubators, you get free bunch of free credits. You get a bunch of like AWS credits or Microsoft, whatever credits, you get Cloud credits, and you're having fun when you're in your free credit time. But do you know how much it costing you to create your product? Do you know how much is marketing costing you? Do you know how much every customer costs you? So, how much is it costing you to run the company? How much is it costing you to build the product? So you need to, as a founder, you need to know these costs, because the time of freebies is going to end soon. And so can you keep building? Because it's very easy to, just prompt something, and I've seen myself do that. I'm writing some code and I know that it's just one line I need to change, and I could change it manually, but then I'm just like, I'm just going to prompt it, and then I'm wasting tokens. And I don't think about wasting tokens right now when the tokens are free. So in an AI native space, for a founder, they need to understand that yes, it looks like building has become cheaper, but the costs have not gone down entirely. They've just moved from different places. So I mean, previously you might have to hire many developers altogether to even like build from like going from MVP to, let's say, a little mature stage of the product. Now maybe you don't have to hire as many people. You have to have, like, you're using more tokens, but how much are the tokens costing you? How much are you using? How many features are you building within that token usage? So the changes, like the shift in the costs, is very necessary to understand, because when you raise money, you need to tell how you're going to spend them. And if you don't know how you're going to spend them, you're not going to get funded. So it's very necessary to understand, one is that how are you going to spend this money? Where are your real costs? How are you going to make it last? Is it going to last you until your next PMS? So these are the same signals that you would monitor before AI native building. It's just that you need to identify that just because you can hire fewer people does not mean costs are massively going to go down. So that is something I would say to keep an eye out on in terms of financial readiness. And I think the second thing is, again, the common thing, which is that you should be able to explain. So it's fine that some of your numbers are wrong, or some of your calculations or predictions or projections are wrong. All projections are wrong. But can you explain what was your thought process behind that? What was your hypothesis when you started doing this? What went right? What went wrong? How can you fix this? So knowing your story is also equally important in terms of the financial readiness.
Shruti, I appreciate that, and I know it's really important. Just as an add-on as well, for founders to start putting together their data room, so that responsibility, holding themselves accountable and having the data there so that investors can quickly review and assess, and it helps to keep the founders in check as well, their own check and
Exactly.
balance.
Exactly. The data room is as much for the investors as it is for the founders. So it's a process. Building a data room is a process where you are going and looking into your startup. Do you have everything? Have you thought about everything? The format is for a reason. It's not just for investors to see and figure out and make a decision if you're investable or not, but it's also for you to see what are your strategies, where are you currently, because even as you're building that data room, you already see it. Like, you can go to any investor's page and read their thesis and, look at their portfolio and sort of understand what kind of companies they funded, what was sort of the numbers around that company when they were funded. So you already know while you're building it if you're ready or not. So it's as much as an exercise for founders as much as it is for investors to see your data room.
On point. Thanks for that, Shruti. All right, so we're gonna close off the formal part of the evening in terms of the panel discussion. I'd like to thank all the panelists again. Yaniv, Shruti, Saelese, Lissette, Andy. Thank you all so very much. We have quite a few questions, but I'll hand over to Nike and Adana. I believe we have about 5 questions in the Q&A, and Adana, I don't know how many we have in the chat. But Nike, you want to take the mic?
Sure. Yeah, favorite part of our session is always the Q&A. And we have quite a few. The first question is for Yaniv. Considering AI is now beta across the board, how are you seeing businesses in the service sector increase their value propositions?
Beta as in risk and variance?
Can the person who asked the question or typed the question, if they can unmute?
Feel free to unmute.
Beta?
Yeah, I asked the question, Yaniv. It's Nate from the Cayman Islands. Yeah, no, I meant beta as in it's kind of it's like the market norm now. Like everybody's got access to it, so it kind of removes, like if you're not using AI, you're pretty much below the market essentially. So that's how I meant.
Yeah. Okay. Could you repeat the question, please?
Mm-hmm. How are you seeing businesses in the service sector increase their value propositions, given that AI is now used across the board?
Right. Yes, because most businesses in the service sector are, well, most of the classics ones are, their businesses are shrinking massively. I see it in 2 directions, actually. First of all, well, I'll start from the services sector. Let's take the example of some of the big 3, BCG, McKinsey, and Bain. Those guys there, they are massively, let's not say abusing AI, but leveraging AI enormously to speed up the development of their work. They're applying it to speed up, but then we have all the boutiques trying to compete with them. The challenge that the first is experiencing is that really a lot of the work of consultancy can be done by typing in a few questions into ChatGPT. You can make your own consultant quite effectively. So what can they differentiate on? The answer is operations, actual delivery. The movements I'm seeing within the services sector are stepping away from advisory into implementation, knowing how to convert something into an AI functionality, because that is really the key thing any given company needs to do to catch up to everybody else. You need to be using AI, but how? Because if you are an emergent, you can use AI from the get-go. However, if you're an incumbent, if you're an already functional business, you have to convert yourself into that AI native state to be competitive. Otherwise, you're going to be swallowed up by the other companies who have the means to start applying all those AI technologies, or more importantly, the connections to then start consolidating those and blocking you away from them because you can't really compete on the technicals. So a lot of them are moving to, well, not so much moving towards, but I'm seeing the rise of AI-focused consultancies where their deliverable is converting or upgrading your business into something that is automated, plugged into the AI ecosystem and converted into that AI native thing. Now, I just want to nudge into something else, the world of VC or investment, alternative investment mechanisms. As you're seeing here, the big advantages that are appearing with the AI technologies and the challenges to having extra funding come in the people who would be doing that consulting who can't do their job anymore because their version of the sector is shrinking. They are learning to start providing support to VCs. So converting, so there's a lot of move in the VC space into that smart money. Of course, historically, a lot of people have spoken about being smart money. Historically, a lot of them have been lying. And the big VCs who are how the consulting sector is evolving is similar how the VC sector is evolving, providing not just capital, but providing knowledge, network, guidance, experience, introductions, security, signaling. Those conditionals, they're being applied into the VC space. Hence, a lot of which is, I actually really like it. I really respect it because it's moving away from just throwing cash at something and hoping that it works, or hoping that you can lie about it, which is why I'm on here with a Founder Institute exercise with Rawle, because like this is the exact example of those things that all the advantages of consultancy being applied into somewhere else. Meanwhile, consultancy converting itself into operations. That's where I'm seeing the change happen.
Awesome. Thank you. Moving on, the next question is for Saelese. The regulatory angle is something I have given a lot of thought, says the participant. Thanks for sharing your views. In a regulatory business where you need a license to operate, does AI actually allow you to price a premium for this assumed liability?
Okay, so definitely in a regulated business, then there are a couple different layers that you have to think about. And not just the market, but your statutory framework would allow you to, or enable you and tell you what you can include, what you can't exclude, etc. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see the use of AI as being an additional risk. If you think about it with a regular business, you have the same types of risks when you have employees, when you have human capital. We talked about the Pocket OS example where AI went rogue and deleted databases. Technically, that same thing can happen with a human employee. It's not, it's the risk is slightly higher, but it's not removed altogether. And then it comes back down to governance and processes and systems as well for how decisions are made, where you have the humans in the loop, what skills the humans in the loop have, and what supervision they have. So I don't see AI as being an additional risk from that perspective. And if so, maybe a slightly higher, but not that much higher. It certainly has its counterparts in the real world anyway. And then on top of that too, what I would say, and I think Shruti made this fantastic point, which goes over a lot of people's heads about the cost of AI. And yes, you're comparing the cost of getting something done, whether that is a raw cost in money or time and resources. and it being seen as cheaper, but a lot of that is subsidized. And I mean, I think back to examples that we've seen before, like the early days of the credit card industry, where people were being incentivized. I mean, I wasn't there because, like Lissette, I'm 25, but people were getting these these massive incentives to use the new systems, the new tech. So it was like, okay, come, yes, get this card, you get endless credit, you get bonus points, you get miles to use, you get insurance, you get this, you can't charge additional for using the product. So it's going to be the same cost as cash. And it was heavily incentivized without necessarily thinking about the actual costs of what the system was going to consume to maintain. So I feel like that's the equivalent of where we're now at with AI. We get free tokens, just as Shruti would have said. We can hop from platform to platform, because I do that when I used to have a subscription for ChatGPT, but now when I get a message on ChatGPT that I stopped paying for my subscription. And when I get a message on ChatGPT that I've used whatever allocation I have for the day, I just jump to Gemini or Claude or whichever other one that I already use. So I have like 4 in rotation, right? And we can afford to do that because everybody wants us to come on board. So there's this mass over incentivization that I would say that is not realistic, because companies have to make money. That's the point of a corporate entity and its duty to its shareholders, etc. So we're not seeing that as consumers. So going back to the question in terms of the pricing mechanism, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be a regulatory function in most instances, but more a market function as to the pricing and other parameters for a product. But at the same time, as I was saying, it's just going to be a decision of which costs more. Is it, and I can give you an example. So for instance, in the product that I'm building, I had to input a lot of material because I was building my own mini LLM for internal use. And I had to input a lot of sanctions lists, for instance. The AI was able to parse the list and put them into categories, but then there still had to be manual filtering through, and I had to think about whether I wanted the AI to continue to do that, which it was perfectly capable of doing and could do very quickly, but it cost, right? Or if I wanted to have an assistant, a human assistant, do that instead and get them to check it over so that I didn't have to do that to verify the information. And I think that's a very real decision that most founders and business owners are going to have to grapple with over the next couple months into years as we continue to build and develop. I hope that
super interesting. Probably more than answered. Yeah, very interesting questions coming up. Yeah, with this new technology and how to build around it. The next question is for Andy. So the person agrees with what you said, to automate the boring things. Thanks very much for the insights. Building out multiple distribution channels across owned and rented mediums is a time sink. As a founder, is there an optimal way in how you should be allocating your time?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say you definitely don't want to be doing everything all at once. But you could probably learn a lot from similar companies to what you're doing, even if it's tangential. It's not like a direct apples to apples comparison. You could learn about their go-to-market and maybe some of the channels that, worked for them that could probably work for you as well. So I'd probably start there. So start with a thesis in terms of what you think, which channels would be most effective. And then it's really about the speed of learning, just trying a couple different channels, seeing which one works. And once you're ready to scale, then you could dump in more resources and really, build out that channel and really scale it. But you gotta have a solid foundation first, right? So in terms of NachoNacho, we're a marketplace. So, we look at standard, the typical marketplace marketing channels, which obviously SEO is one of the big ones, which we've invested a lot of time and resources into. That one, you have to kind of wait a little while for it to actually produce results. So probably a more near-term example in the early stages of the company was really seeding the supply side of the market. So what we had to do is we knew as a marketplace, it doesn't matter if we're selling t-shirts on Amazon or business software, we need to have high quality products that people actually want. So what we did is knowing that problem existed because we were a marketplace, we seeded the market with high quality supply from some of the top tier vendors you could find. And a lot of that work initially was direct sales. We met people at events, we reached out to people, we built this pipeline of business from the ground up. And once we seeded the supply side, it became a lot easier to attract customers, and there was scalable SEO advertising because we had an offering for people. So for your company, you should try to look at what other companies have done in the past, even if it's not directly related. Learn from what they did. Start with those channels and see if you can make that work for you as well. And then once you find success there, really scale it out. And maybe a great example too, even from an operational standpoint, if you look at Amazon and them becoming one of the biggest logistics companies in the world, why did they do that, right? They were just a marketplace trying to sell initially books and then t-shirts and everything else. But a lot of their business now revolves around, AWS cloud and logistics. And the reason they did that is because the core of what their business was and what they realized early on was they're not just selling books. They're selling a great customer experience, the best place to be able to buy anything you need on Amazon. And the reason why they did the logistics, which is a layer that they added on later, was because they wanted to enhance the customer experience. They knew speed of delivery was important. They knew getting the price down was important. And if you have that supply chain distribution, you could be able to achieve those things and provide a better customer experience. So obviously, that's not the thing that they led with initially, but that just gives you an example of how you could layer on new things as you learn and grow your company. But definitely learn from other examples, even if it's not a direct apples to apples comparison. Start with what worked with them, see if you could duplicate it, and then scale those channels as you go forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's always a risk of like spreading yourself too thin and trying to do everything all at once. So I think that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yep, a wise man learns from other people.
Yeah,
On their own.
I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, yeah, it's also true here. The next question, moving on to Shruti. It was interesting when you said more companies may be better off being cash cows versus moonshots. What if VC is not the correct funding for the business as you're looking for longevity? Yeah, that's the second question, but maybe we'll start with this one.
Yeah, so I mean, the statistics sort of say it all, right? Only 1% of the startups become unicorns. Does not mean you don't wish for moonshots, but I think financially speaking, you're more like, what would you rather want? Would you rather want to burn fast and try to grow fast in trying to become a unicorn, but then die off within the first 3 months of first 3 years, I'm sorry, or actually make profitable companies? So that is the thesis that we're going with, is that we need more companies to be operational and profitable and last longer and create jobs, and in this economy create employment, and that is what we need. So the idea is to not wish for bigger things, but to do it more efficiently. And then in those terms, if for most companies, VC is not the right funding way. We all want to maybe not be listed in the Forbes 30 under 30, because we know what that leads to, but we all want to have those posts with round led by so and so, and all of these things. But if you look at the statistics, that's a very small percentage of startups that get to do that. For the others, they're still, I mean, they're still building. So there are multiple ways you can build startups in terms of like how you manage the finances. So one of the biggest thing is bootstrapping, and I know it's easier said than done. Not everyone can bootstrap, but there are ways to bootstrap. There have always been ways to bootstrap. There are government grants. So where I live in Germany, there's quite a few government grants. You get a stipend for up to like 10 months, 12 months to build the product, and you and your co-founders can get that stipend. So you're essentially bootstrapping it, from this stipend. Then you have a lot of these other grants that you can avail, like as early stage founders, be greedy. Get your hands on every grant that is possible. Free credits, yes, go for them. Anything free, absolutely go for them, because you want to build that first. You want to do that outreach. You want to build that first prototype or whatever. You want to validate before you have to actually spend more cash and get investment. So I would say if there is funding available, if there's grants available, if there's any sort of credits available from any of these ecosystems, go for them. I think the second thing is what I've seen in Berlin quite a bit is that people have started running their companies as services first and then create a product around it. So, people have started looking at, people identify a problem, they start trying to solve that problem as a service. So you go and you manually solve that problem, start making money already like a consultant, and slowly you find out what are the repeatable parts of this and build the product around it. So that could be a great way to also fund your startup, which is that you start selling it as a service first, you start making money, and then you build the product around it. There are still a few people who are who have I don't know what thoughts I have about it, but there are people who are still building products while freelancing or holding a full-time job. So in my opinion, that's too hard. And the 24 hours that I have right now are really very, like, I feel they're very less for what is to be done. But there are people doing it. So there are multiple ways. VC is not the only way to go. And in the end, revenue is your best funding. So if the revenue keeps your company afloat, that's your best funding.
That is very true. Yeah. So there's actually a follow-up question. You touched on it already a little bit, but there's a follow-up question about other funding options like private equity and other institutional investors and how they stack up in terms of signal or metrics that matter to them. And is there any difference to VCs, how they look at companies?
Absolutely. So private equity is something, they invest in much mature companies, right? So they might not be very relevant to early stage founders. And I'm guessing we're all talking to early stage founders right now. So private equity is not very, they don't come into picture early on. Private equity needs to see revenue. They need to see margins. They need to see EBITDA. So without going into too much jargon, VC runs on this power law that they want to, let's say they invest in 20 companies. They hope that there is this one company that's gonna return them all the investment that they did in all the 20 companies. And because of that, they're ready to write off 4 companies. They're ready to have fewer returns from the other companies. But what they're hunting for is that one company that gives them massive returns, and which is why VC pushes for growth. And that growth sometimes means no revenue. So we spoke about, like Saelese spoke about how there's a lot of subsidy given to bring you on board, which is why it is to show growth. So VCs focus more on growth, whereas if you talk about other institutional investors or PE, they want to see revenue, they want to see margins, they want to see cash flow. So those are like the foundations of normal business, and not that startups are not normal business, but like the business that the way it has always been. Those metrics are applicable here as well. What would be interesting for early stage founders is angels. So here, I think angels play a really important role because
And
they
Andy is
are
one, right?
not. Absolutely. So they're not VCs, they're investing their own money. So their metrics are a little different. Sometimes it could just be that there's a person who really believes in what you're building, or they've had this problem and they really want to see the solution, materialize. So in with angels, there is no fixed, let's say, set of metrics that they look at. But of course, they want to have a profitable company. They want to see that you can make money. They want to see, as a founder, you have the potential to sell. They want to see that you have a vision, a certain vision of how you want the product to be. So, as an alternate source, I think I would go to angels. I would go to people who believe in you, and they would be a great source of investments initially, or like pretty early on. I hope that answers this.
Yeah, so there are quite a few differences, and founders are well advised to check what they're actually looking for and what stage they're at, and yeah, getting the numbers right as well. And I know you're an expert in that. Moving on, Daniel has another question. I'm a technical founder in Trinidad and Tobago building a B2B prospecting application utilizing AI. What has your experience been like in prospecting for customers in your startup? It's an open question to the panel.
Perhaps Lissette would take
Lissette, maybe?
Yeah.
Sure. So let me answer you as a founder. So I use AI for prospecting to, kind of measure, like if the sales efforts are working, whether or not that person, is the right fit for the product. From our customers' perspective, we're more careful. And the reason is data protection, right? So I'm not familiar with the data protection framework in Trinidad and Tobago, but I can tell you for experience in the Cayman Islands and Jamaica and St. Kitts and Nevis is quite tricky. And in fact, if you are in a jurisdiction that belong to the Commonwealth, very soon enough, you will have to even kind of say that you're using AI for prospecting. So anything there is evaluating people and, qualifying if they apply for something, whether it's sales or insurance or training or jobs, you now will have to declare that you're using AI to do so. So there is a lot of advantage, but from a data collection perspective and personalization, but I can also tell you from the experience that there is a lot of customers and a lot of people, especially in the United States. And Andy, maybe you also have the same experience from a marketing perspective, that are so done with the bots reaching out, for qualification. There is people just needing that personal touch. So if you're thinking about building a SaaS product for prospecting, just try to keep that in mind on how that relationship and that approach is going to be about, because the spamming is, insane. We're not experiencing that much in the Caribbean, but most of the financial sector clients that I have in Cayman that reach to European or American or Canadian markets are trying to avoid it as the plague. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Going back to the handwritten letters, maybe, and as an add-on. One last question. This is also for you, Lissette. Are you aware of any government incentives in the tech space for AI or AI-related ventures?
Right. So, if you're asking from grants or investment perspective, I'm not aware of any. And across the Caribbean, governments are trying to grasp their own legislation and policies and trying to, understand how they're going to approach all of this technology and adapting to it. But what I can say, and I'm very proud to say, is that there is a lot of private-public partnerships. You see a lot of economic zones booming. The Cayman Islands has not only one, but two very successful case studies. We have Cayman Enterprise City and Tech Cayman, that in recent months are more proactive with government and government with them into training and encouraging, not with money, but with knowledge and licensings and so on and so forth, small business owners to adopt more technology, not only AI, but in the Cayman Islands, for instance, we're huge in blockchain. And all of that, it seems that it's booming. For what I learned in the past cohort, or in the first cohort that Founder Institute Caribbean did, there is also a huge interest in other islands. So yeah, so in terms of incentive, it's more about the frameworks and the special economic zones and the tax advantages that you can get when you join this economic zones than actually government investment into AI. I have to say that from a business and commercial opportunity, I see governments calling more RFPs for things like sustainability, waste management, cloud computing. There is a lot of interest as well with traffic management and congestions. There is also a spike in security in terms of surveillance and things like that. So those are the niches that I can see. There is a recent need, from a government perspective, into exploring opportunities to bring AI first companies.
Yeah, interesting. It is, it's important to keep in mind that incentives can come in many shapes and forms, not just grants
Yes,
or
exactly.
funding opportunities, but also regulatory frameworks and all kinds of other advantages that might not look like ones at first glance, but might be setting the infrastructure for building.
If I can add something here.
Yes, please.
So there are these options which are also like grants that are offered by different regions, and sometimes they're actually not geo-locked. So for example, there is the EIC accelerator, and EIC accelerator has certain let's say sectors that they invest into, or rather have grants for, and they do say that I mean, you need to solve for Europe, but sometimes it's also worldwide. So if you check individual grants or individual call for startups that they have, it really I mean, it depends whether that particular grant is worldwide or only for Europe. So what I'm trying to say is, do not discount regional grants, because sometimes they might not be only for that region. The idea is that that region is encouraging startups in that area, or they are calling to solve problems of that region, but the startups can be anywhere worldwide. So I wouldn't discount looking into startup grants of specific regions.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And the European Union is investing a lot also in the region. So definitely check that out. You're looking for grants. There was another question popping in, also for you, Lissette. I'm a founder for an app to help small experience providers, and I would like to either partner or be able to collaborate with the Ministry of Tourism in the Dominican Republic. How do you believe I could approach politicians as individuals starting from zero?
Like, God, you're asking me about politicians.
Share your wisdom.
So I can talk from my own experience. We hold the license for BlackBerry Ad Hoc for the Cayman Islands National Emergency Notification System. And, when we started this process with the Cayman Islands government, it was, like, we were a very tiny company. We were only like 3 years on island. And, it was like there are bigger players And what worked for us is that we never approach government as vendors to try to sell them the technology. We knew they need it. We were residents and we were feeling the pain of not having a proper, reliable emergency notification system. But I never went to them and say, hey, I have the software to help you solve this issue. I went to offer help. So the first thing we did is we sat down with them and we say, from our own heart, we're going to help you research what is the best solution to this problem. So even if you have already a product that you're building, that you believe is going to solve an interesting case study for the Dominican Republic Department of Tourism, my advice is always just sit down with them, help them do the research based on your understanding of the technology and the problem they have. And don't close your eyes to other possibilities than your own product. Sometimes we're very fixated on what is that we want to build. And sometimes just partnering or bringing a piece of technology that then you can leverage and bridge into your own product might be the right solution. So that's the approach I will recommend you to take. Also, it depends on what app you are providing, right? Back in the days, I remember, for instance, in Dubai, this is 13 years ago, the whole beacons, which is the Bluetooth technology that you walk and then there are Bluetooth connected and then your phone start popping with things. They were very famous 15 years ago in Disneyland, for instance. And I remember coming to Cayman 11 years ago and saying, my gosh, let's put beacons all over Cayman Islands. So every time a tourist comes, the alerts and the things and the drinks and the restaurants offers will pop up. And everybody looked at me like, what? Talking about, you're crazy. Because the market wasn't ready for that, right? So people will be like, I'm not going to turn my Bluetooth. What is the Bluetooth to start with? So just sit down with them first to understand what is the experience they want to cater, right? For the visitors. See, honestly, if your product is the right solution and keep an eye open because perhaps there is a piece of technology out there that you can bring. Just sign a non-disclosure with them and then you are the reseller of that technology, So yeah, that's how I will approach it.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think these were some very practical tips. And coming back to what we said at the beginning, I give first before you ask for anything. I think that was it for the questions. So we'll wrap up the Q&A and I'll hand it over to you, Rawle.
Thank you so very much, Nikki. All right. So as we approach the top of the hour, I would like to invite each panelist in 30 to 60 seconds, closing thoughts. Yaniv, start with you.
All right. When you're thinking about becoming AI native, always remember that there is a shifting economy happening around us. And what we have is a new kind of ecosystem. Figure out, actually following on from Lissette just said, figure out, first of all, what your market needs, but also what the AI systems you're plugging into need and what you can use from those. Use every single opportunity as a learning experience and as a mechanism to gather more data so that you have strategic capabilities as well as knowledge capabilities. And if you have all those pieces in place, then you can very easily start being revenue generating. And then from then on, you can maybe try to go for a unicorn, but it's a more incremental process now.
Thank you, Yaniv. Saelese, closing thoughts?
So I just wanted to jump on and add in, give yes, but especially when you're dealing with people with money, even with an NDA, please don't give too much because you will see your idea and your business being run without you, sometimes on a national scale, speaking from experience there and experience from my clients as well. So there's that. But also what I would say is in business building, so one of the cool things that I liked living in London was that there were these different channels of delivery. So like, okay, think of a supermarket, for instance. They had the fast lane where You can just go get your groceries cashed very quickly. They had the fast checkouts, which was self-service, and later on that became entire supermarkets where there were no cashiers at all. You didn't have to interact with anybody human. You did your shopping, checked out yourself, and went your way. But then they started introducing these slow lanes for older persons who wanted the human touch, who wanted to have a conversation, who wanted somebody to see them and ask about their grandkids, that kind of thing. So when you're building, you have to think about if your market is ready to move with you, where is your market at? And that determines how you provide your products and services, what channels, how you deliver, your expectations. All of that has to be a structured, tailored conversation that you have with yourself and your advisors. And then the final thing that I would say is it's very difficult to see your blind spots. I know that from personal experience. And just a very quick story, so this is completely unbelievable, but I went to a food park recently, and my husband and daughter walked away from where I was. And so I'm looking at for them, but my husband's very tall. So I'm looking this way up because I'm expecting to see him. He is a bit away from my daughter. And he says, from his perspective, he's seeing me standing next to her. I did not see her at all. Like my own child is next to me and I didn't see her. So I just say that to illustrate when you're deep down in something and you're invested and you're expecting certain results, certain answers, you're not going to see the risks and everything else that is associated with it. So please get professional advice or just step away and look at things from a different lens and aspect. And I'm sure we'll all be fine.
Love that, Saelese. Even the best athletes have coaches, right? So yeah, on point. Shruti, closing thoughts?
Yes, I think closing thoughts for me would be the same that, the essence of business is the same, cash going in, cash going out. You need to know at all times. AI has not changed that basic structure. It has just moved the cost. So be very careful. You need to know what your unit economics are. You need to know where exactly are you spending. And to just add on to the whole AI native building, right? The so I coincidentally I was at an Founders Institute, another Founders Institute event in Berlin where Adeo Resi was here, and he had some great insights to say share, which was that do not add AI because we now have to use AI in everything. Do not think about how can I build my product with AI. What you need to think about is what is the outcome that you expect. And just saying what Lisa was also saying, that do you are you adding fast lanes because everyone is adding fast lanes? Do people what do your people want? People maybe they want slow lanes. So in that sense, do not focus on, hey, I want to use AI to build something, or I want to use Claude Code or whatever the next new fancy AI stuff is. Try to understand what is the outcome you want to have, and does adding AI or agentic workflow give me a better outcome, or is there another way I can still have this better outcome? So think in those terms of think in terms of outcomes and not process and operations. Yeah, that is what I have to say.
Thank you, Shruti. And Adeo Resi is the GOAT. For those of you who don't know, he was the one that created the SAFE document. I mean, he's up there with the best of the best. So thanks for that, Shruti. Andy, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of tack onto that too. Now more than ever, the technology is easy. I think the people are hard, especially getting people's attention. So now it's, like we've been talking about in this entire webinar, it's easier to ship a product. It's faster and quicker to get, and it's more scalable to get in front of people. But are you being effective, right? So if you always go back to the people element, that's where you'll succeed. If you care about the problem that you're solving, actually helping solve real human problems, you'll probably have a product that people actually want. And if you actually go about your marketing and your go-to-market in a more authentic way, where you're really trying to connect with people and actually understand their problem and connect with them over that, that will allow to maintain that authenticity, to be able to actually reach and connect with people, not just be noise online and all that other AI slop that people are throwing around.
Thanks a lot, Andy. We'll do our best to avoid the slop. Lissette, under 30 seconds. Bring us home, Lissette.
Yeah, so my advice is you might want to be, or maybe you are an AI first startup, but what is the level of AI readiness of your potential customers? So you might be out there, but they might be right there. So look at it, open your eyes, understand. Perhaps you have the solution to the biggest problem ever, but if they're not ready, if the data is not ready, if the systems are not ready, if the culture is not ready, if the people is not ready, then it doesn't matter how ready you are and how AI first you are. So understanding that, I think, is fundamental to actually get traction, because if you start by selling the technology, you are not going to get off. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lissette. So we are at time. I'd like to thank all the attendees this evening. Thank you so very much for coming out. We hope we delivered some value. Thank you to our fabulous panelists, Andy, Lissette, Shruti, Saelese, Yaniv. Thank you all so very much. And last but certainly not least, to my amazing team, Adana and Nike. Thank you all. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll be doing this again next month. Our cohort kicks off May 20th. So if you haven't applied, you still can. And thank you as well to our corporate partners, Lavuka Venture Lab and Cayman Enterprise City. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, take care.
Bye. Bye, everyone.